Yep. So we're recording now.
Information. I had intended yeah, I had intended to do that. Earlier. They please slow us down on the interstate. You, not personally. No.
And we're live.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to MRC's quarterly board meeting. I'm Karen Cassell, president of the board, and we appreciate you participating today. It looks like we've got all of the board here in person and some of our staff and folks participating online as well. Thank you for that. Do we have any changes to the agenda today that we need to make? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our first item, which is, as always, consideration of the minutes. And this time it's at the July 27th quarterly meeting, the August 31st, September 9th, September 19th, and September 26th special meetings. Do I have a motion? So
Second.
a motion and a second. Any comments or changes that anybody needs? George?
Yes, on the meeting on the minutes for the quarterly meeting on page 6. On the third line, it says George Aronson reports he attended a tour of the plant. That's not quite true. It ought to say George Aronson reports he met virtually with Mr. Carroll and the Weaver representative. So I just wanted to make sure that was edited incorrectly.
Very good. Thank you, George. Any other changes? All right, seeing none, we will vote. Do we need to do a roll call vote, John? Or since we're here in person?
We're all here in person, we don't need.
Okay, so all in favor? Pass unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have our executive director report from Mike Carroll.
Thank you, Karen. So we'll begin with some third quarter regular business updates and stats, and then we'll jump into where everything stands with the Hamden facility, now known as MWS Municipal Waste Solutions. Start with stats. The MSW tonnages for third quarter. Members total MSW tons for the third quarter of 2022 were 26,388 tons. Last year's members tons for the third quarter were 26,931. A decrease in tonnage year over year of just about 543 tons. Bypass notice in Q3. MRC still sends out bypass notices out monthly to all members, which directs MRC members on where they should be sending their waste until the reopening of MWS facility. Outside of the regular bypass schedule, we had to divert waste for 5 weeks from PERC in the third quarter to JRL. PERC experienced some mechanical and staffing issues during the third quarter, but members' waste has been going back to PERC at the start of the fourth quarter for processing. On Wednesday, October 19th, Governor Janet Mills and other guests toured the Municipal Waste Solutions facility in Hamden. This was an exciting opportunity to show the governor our commitment to the process and recycling of municipal solid waste for our region. The governor toured all the exterior and interior of the facility and was brought up to date on where everything stands for the reopening of MWS. In addition to some MRC board members, we also had in attendance Maine DEP Commissioner Melanie Loisum, a representative from the host community, Hamden Town Manager Paula Scott, and an MRC member representative from Oakland, Ella Bowman, Town Manager. The governor said she was impressed by the regional collaboration with the solid waste hierarchy and was enthusiastic about the environment and economic benefits the plant is poised to provide. We have also had several meetings with the DEP in Q3 discussing and starting the process for transferring the permits associated with the plant to the new name Municipal Waste Solutions. Haley Ward has played a big part in this endeavor. Haley Ward worked with the MRC on all required documentation and applications, which DEP now is filed and accepted. They are not approved at this time, but they have been accepted as all the necessary information has been completed and received. MRC attended the Maine Municipal Association MMA conference this month. MRC had a booth and felt it was a great turnout and very successful. MRC was able to connect with many of its members. Revere Capital Advisors, MRC's potential partner, also had a couple of representatives there working alongside us in the MRC booth. Pat and Nigel from Revere were able to speak with many of our members and provide more detailed updates in person. Many MRC members, including Bangor City Manager and the Mayor of Hamden, met with Revere and discussed what the future looks like. Overall, it went very well, and I thank all the board members who stopped by the booth and helped reach out to the membership. And I also thank all the members who stopped by to say hello and also to meet with the Revere representatives. Thank you all. The MRC also had a virtual town hall meeting this month, scheduled in October 12th at 10 a.m. We hosted this meeting to discuss the fundamental matters process, provided an update on the proposed partnership transaction with Revere, and gave members an opportunity for questions and comments. Revere was also in attendance for the town hall, which gave members another opportunity to connect with them if they did not get a chance at the MMA. Around August 1st, the MRC received a $42,467 grant from the Maine Technology Institute, MTI, Pandemic Recovery for Innovative Maine Economy, PRIME Fund. Governor Mills announced recipients, which are federal funds directed to the state of Maine. The funds awarded to the MRC will be designated and used for needed items in moving forward to reopening MWS facility. We are encouraged that the state of Maine selected the MRC because this will help the successful reopening for our members so that municipal solid waste can be processed and recycled at the facility once again. So those are the regular business updates. Now we can move forward on facility updates for third quarter. As most everyone is aware, with the court's approval, MRC purchased the Hamden facility on August 10th of this year from the bondholders and created a new company, Municipal Waste Solutions, MWS. As the new owner and identity of the Hamden facility, MWS is an LLC that is currently owned and operated by the MRC. The purchase price for the plant was $1.5 million minus any credits of specific costs MRC acquired during the final sale process. MRC worked with the current lien holders on settlement terms and payment plans until the next round of financing comes to fruition to pay those debts off. After 2 long years of uncertainty, we are excited to take complete control and make timely decisions on the plan. We, the MRC and its members, are now finally in the driver's seat. In late July, once we knew the MRC could end up with the plan, we started working more in depth with Revere Capital Advisors, LLC. Revere Capital's won exclusivity with their partnership proposal presented to the MRC. Revere Capital was given 60-day exclusivity, which ended September 26th, to complete due diligence and finalize a partnership agreement in closing. Since the 26th, Revere has requested more time. Revere needs the additional time to work with facility operators and project managers on the details of financial and operating plan to implement a profit improvement program and biogas upgrade to restart the MWS facility and operate it profitably. MRC's board voted to accept the proposed terms negotiated with Revere Capital Advisors for an additional time needed, with the expectation of a financial closing on or before November 10th. MRC then executed a term sheet with Revere. The agreement will extend the exclusivity period for additional 45 days to November 10th to allow Revere to complete their due diligence and a legal documentation for the investment in Municipal Waste Solutions, LLC. The executed term sheet specifies that Revere will acquire controlling interest in the Municipal Waste Solutions, LLC, with the MRC retaining a minority ownership. As the majority owner, Revere will supply the financial capital needed to reopen MWS, while the MRC's minority stake will provide it with a seat at the table. MRC will continue to own the land beneath the facility and receive lease payments. MRC will also receive a per ton fee for providing certain management services to the plant and municipal waste solutions, which will help MRC recoup money spent during the plant closure. We are encouraged by Revere's continued interest in the project and significant efforts to bring it to completion. Over the next several weeks, Revere expects to complete the due diligence. Revere has experts on site reviewing the plant's equipment, technology, and operation. Revere intends to operate the plant as it was designed to operate, which includes significant improvements and efficiencies to the operations. Some of the proposed terms Revere needed to be addressed with members as fundamental matters. Fundamental matter notices were sent to all MRC members via certified mail on September 29th. The notices detailed what each of the 4 fundamental matters were, and we also scheduled a town hall in October to review those fundamental matters with members. The fundamental matters process ends this Friday, September 28th. And so far, we have had 1 member request a special meeting, which represents 4,000 tons of the 60,000 tons of members' tonnage needed to call a special meeting. The proposed terms with Revere include the following 4 fundamental matters. 1 and 2 are more or less the same, resetting the clock on the master waste supply agreement and on the site lease to a 15-year term. This allows Revere much more flexibility with financing and profitability. The third fundamental matter would be MRC as the owner of MWS, which is considered an MRC asset that MRC is selling a stake in. This asset is valued at over $100,000, which requires members' notice. And number 4 is rebates, formula, and terminology will change in the waste agreement to profit sharing, meaning the current agreement references rebates, and now the MRC will be an owner and it needs to reference profit share. As we move closer to a financial closing and try to keep everything on track moving forward, we are meeting with Revere regularly and reviewing a weekly checklist. The following is what Revere provided me just before this meeting for this week's update. Number 1, Revere EPA counsel from Bernstein Shore is up to speed and has been working with Haley Ward on the background of the beneficial use permit and its modifications. Now that they have all the background and the history of the permit, they are looking to schedule a meeting with DEP as soon as possible. And 2, a hand plant tour and meeting with Revere's financer this week which included myself. The financer is completing his work to join Revere's investment group. This particular financer has the resources to complete the November 10th purchase and also has the permanent financing for the ongoing restart of the facility. Revere also has alternatives if needed. However, this financer that toured has long experience in running businesses in Maine and would be a significant asset to the project. Number 3, Revere and finance continue to evaluate the engineering EPC proposal to access and implement the PIP, biogas upgrade and restart of the plant. Revere should be in the position to select and engage an engineering/project manager firm shortly. Number 4, Revere's decisions with the preferred operator are Revere's discussions with the preferred operator are ongoing. Revere believes the operator will be well positioned to staff and oversee the plant's operations when the plant is finally brought back online. Finally, number 5, Revere feels it's made good progress on all fronts, driving forward to the November 10th date, and will continue to update the MRC on the interim. So that's all I have for the ED update. In other news and committees, I wanted to mention to the board and MRC members, the DEP will be conducting a series of stakeholder meetings addressing rulemaking topics for 38M, RS, and 2146 stewardship programs for packaging beginning in December of 2022. This is the producer responsibility program for packaging that just recently passed. The DEP has divided rulemaking into the following topic areas, each serving as a subject for at least 2 separate stakeholder meetings. Number 1, producer exemptions in December of 2022. Number 2, municipal reimbursement needing to happen in January of 23. Number 3, recyclable auditing and program performance will happen in March. Number 4, education and investments in April. And number 5, payments and reporting meeting will happen in July. I encourage anyone that can get involved in these meetings to do so. For each topic, the first meeting will provide stakeholders an opportunity to outline their perspectives as well as suggest specific language in these rules. Just go to the DEP website and type in producer responsibility program for packaging. All the information you'll need is right there, and you can RSVP there to attend the meetings. That's all I have for my quarterly report at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the board, and then actually answer any questions from the members when we get to the public comment portion of the agenda.
That's it, Mike?
That's it.
So, first, I forgot at the beginning of the meeting to mention that we will have public comment at the end. People can raise their hand and we'll allow you to talk, but you can also use the Q&A feature. If you have questions that you think of along the way, feel free to use the Q&A feature. And again, at public comment, we'll address those as well. So, but thank you, Mike. That's incredible. I mean, what a significant quarter. I mean,
It
there
was
was
a busy
so
quarter.
much that happened, not the least of which is that MRC is now the owner of the facility, which is the
Yeah.
hugest thing of all. So,
Right.
but an incredible amount of work put in by you and the rest of the team. I mean, you've just done a phenomenal job to make it all happen, you know, and just, and on top of that, dealing with the MMA convention, the booth looked fantastic. The governor's visit, the plant looked phenomenal. I mean, it looked pristine, you know, you really just did an amazing job on that. And I just appreciate everything that you do. I know we all do. I did want to circle back. Thank you for bringing up the producer responsibility bill. I'd sort of forgotten that was happening. But I do feel like it's important for MRC to play a significant role in that. It's going to impact us in an important way. And I wonder what your thoughts are about that and how we might be able to work as a board and as an organization to craft a strategy for approaching that, because we do need to provide comments. We need to tell them how we think it should work, how it will work with us in the facility that we're envisioning. You know, it's new. When they wrote that bill, they weren't thinking of our facility for sure. So we need to figure out how we can make it work and benefit our members and meet the intent of the law and those sorts of things. So.
They've actually reached out to us and asked asked us to help distribute their survey to our members, but also asked how we felt that we would look at the recyclable and how it works. And, you know, one of the ideas that we talked about on the table is we have a whole number of waste that comes in, and then and everybody would have, all our members are a different percentage of that whole number. You know, like we have 102,000 tons. Well, Bangor is a certain percentage of that. Carmel's a certain percentage of that. And then, so we look at those percentages and then what's going out of the building, that whole number of everything being recycled and leaving the building, those percentages
Get allocated.
get allocated. So that's when they talk to me about what would be one of the easiest ways and how would we look at tracking this. That is one, the thing that we need to really get in deep discussions on is they're looking at basic like baled cardboard and stuff like that, where we do so much pulp. There has to be something put in for, you know, because we're getting so much fiber than just the baled products. So that's where we really need to take a deep dive in.
So, I mean, do you feel like there's a role that the waste flow committee or somebody could provide in terms of sitting down and thinking about this? Because I do think, I mean, I don't want you to have to do all the thinking about it. I mean, we've got a lot of resources at this table. I think we're all interested in seeing where this goes and making sure that, you know, that we don't miss out on any opportunities for our members. So, I mean,
Tony needs something to do. between now and the-
Why was I sitting here not looking for something, knowing my name is coming up here eventually?
I think that putting that through waste flow makes a ton of sense. I also think it would be it would be good if, after it went through waste flow, we could create some talking points that all board members could get. To be able to not only talk with people who call us, but also craft our own, in a way that makes it also work for our communities, right?
Right, well, share it with our members. I mean, I think a lot of members don't really realize this is out there happening. So I want to make sure they're informed and educated about it so that, like Wendy said, they have an opportunity to participate as well, individually as communities, as well as with us as an organization.
So this is something that I think Tony and I can have a discussion on and start putting, the waste flow.
The work.
So definitely.
So much for retirement.
That my whole goal was to make sure you didn't get bored. Yeah,
Sophie?
so, no, if I could just, I've got a kind of, I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but first, I'd just like to say there's a lot that Mike and I worked on that didn't make it into his report. So not only is there all this that everybody is like, wow, Mike did a lot. Mike did more than a lot because he really has been keeping other things moving and moved offices all in the same quarter. So pretty amazing. I want to talk for just a minute about fundamental matters, and I don't know that there's another place on the agenda. So Mike brought it up. I think there's some confusion among some of our members about what that process is and why it's there. MRC, first and foremost, we have board members who are available to take comments or questions from members. Mike responds to calls. We've had town hall meetings. We have opportunity for people to ask questions during our meetings. So the fundamental matters notice is not about, I have a question and you're not calling a meeting and therefore I'm somehow being left out of this process. The fundamental matters process is a legal process that clearly identifies the areas in which board action can be questioned. No different than a community referendum process in a community that has a town council. So the idea that 60,000 tons is too high of a bar. Number one, everybody who signed on agreed to it when they signed on. Number two, that's like saying 5 people in the community should be able to come together and call a referendum. It's not a meeting that you're calling to get information. It's a meeting that you're calling to overturn an action of the board. And without getting into the topic area of why I think it would be a good idea or a bad idea, let's hold the suspense. It clearly is, I don't agree that it would be great, but it really is, my comment is really pointed more to the process and the idea that some of the comments and questions I've received are trying to spin this like MRC isn't listening to its members. This is not the format for MRC to listen to the members. This is the format for MRC members to overturn actions. So
To call a vote.
yeah, to make an attempt.
Yes.
So I wanted to get that out there because I think it's not fair to paint particularly our staff in a light of withholding information that could be shared with members. And I'll say for myself, if people have wonderful ideas on how we could do this better, number one, would be happy to hear it. And number two, if you really think you can affect change, you can have my seat and I would be happy to sit in the gallery if there's a different way to do it.
I think that's an important clarification. Thank you, Sophie. We did have a town hall meeting just a week or so ago to provide more information about the fundamental matters and the actions that the board took. We're totally open to answered all the questions that were out there. So
We also made it a point that, because if we had where we were in the term sheet and when our negotiations, because we had to put some timeless hours in to get it out with plenty of time before the MMA.
Mhm.
So we wanted
Right,
all those opportunities so that we could be approached at the MMA. People, I think, had it for about a week. And then we had the town hall meeting a week after that for folks that could not make it to the MMA or couldn't get our attention.
And I know you've attended, some town meetings in individual communities as well as answering the questions, as Sophie said,
Yes.
whenever they come in. So,
And I want to be clear, members have every right to make that request, every right. I am getting a little frustrated at having it be spun into something that it's not.
Just to speak to that on a side note, so Mike allowed me to sit at the booth during the MRC or the MMA convention, which was great. I got to meet a lot of people that I'd never met, fairly new on the board. Got a chance to talk with some people during sessions, learned some of the frustrations maybe that they're experiencing. And, I offered that I'd be more than happy to attend a board meeting or a select board meeting, council meeting, that type of thing, just to talk about it and make people feel like they're not in the dark. And I'm pretty sure that anybody on the board here would do that. So, I appreciate, number one, everybody being willing to speak with me, you know what I mean? And getting a chance to meet everyone. But I also just want to throw it out there that don't feel like you're in the dark. If there's, you feel like you don't have someone to talk to, number one, I think Mike goes to anything that he's invited to. You know what I mean? That's just what he does. But there's other board members as well. And I'm the first one to raise my hand and go speak with people at their where they live and talk about this. I'm passionate about this project. I really believe that this is the direction that we need to go. And I'm more than happy to come in and talk about it with anybody that has questions. So just throwing that out there.
all right, any other questions or comments from the board on Mike's update? All right, and I'll just remind our audience, please feel free to put comments and questions in the Q&A. And we'll be coming up to public comment and a few more agenda items. All right, so next up we have our asset management report from our technical consultant, George Aronson.
Okay, thank you, Karen, and thank you to the board. First of all, can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay, I just wanted to make sure. As has been said, it was a very eventful third quarter. Among other things, the MRC closed in the purchase out of the receivership of the facility, and that facility is now owned under the name of MWS LLC. There have been some questions about how do you account for this? What we've done is the asset management letter presents the assets of the MRC. And if you look at the table 1, which is the balance sheet, we have some new items. There's an investment in MWS LLC, which includes 2 pieces: the acquisition cost for the facility, which is part of the basis that the MRC has in the facility, and also the advances for expenses after purchase. So at this point, the facility is not yet returned to operating, so we're keeping track as an advance. There is a question of how exactly to do the MWS accounting. What we've done is, since at this point, MWS has no independent sources of income and all its money is coming from advances from the MRC. Anyway, we're tracking the advances in the public documents. I think as we go forward to a transaction, the nature of MWS and its accounting system is going to change anyway. So I think it's a little bit premature to make decisions on accounting when we're going to have change in that's imminent. So we're tracking everything. I think that so that's a long way of saying that the asset management letter is still tracking the assets of the MRC, including its position in MWS LLC. But I also say, since all of the real cash is moving back and forth among accounts with the MRC's name on it, when you go through the details on page 2 and 3, anything that's an MWS transaction is reflected in the cash flows anyway. So it's a full disclosure of cash management and balances. We're doing it from the point of view of the MRC still, when as the MWS deal is developed, and depending on exactly how things play out with the sale of membership interests, hopefully in November, we may again, for the fourth quarter, see a slightly different presentation of the accounting after that is all run in. Right now, that is not all final, so we're sticking with reporting the position of the MRC, including its investments in MWS. So I just wanted to say that in advance to avoid confusion. We're talking about the MRC big picture and essentially its position as consolidated, and we're not yet disaggregating in MWS and non-MWS asset for now. That being said, I think if you look at the balance sheet, it presents the balances as of September, as of the end of the quarter, September 30th, all the various funds that the MRC continues to own and manage, cash and cash equivalent funds, which is mainly the D&D account. And again, this is the joint venture. This is not the MRC administrative expenses, which are handled separately. The investments in the tip fee stabilization fund, the contingency account, which is used to handle things like expenses for bypass disposal and collecting tip fees from the joining members who are sending waste for bypass disposal. The cash collateral account, which was actually the source of funds to close on the purchase. So you'll see that at the end of the third quarter, that balance is much below what it was in second quarter, because that's the cash that generally was used to make the acquisition. There had been some restrictions on that fund, with the MRC now owning the facility and the former coastal assets. Those restrictions are no longer relevant, so they've been removed from the notes. The investment in MWS LLC is shown, as is an exclusivity deposit by Revere Capital going forward. And finally, the value of the site, which has been there in prior quarters. On liabilities, there are also settlements with all the lien holders, which is one of the things that had to be completed before the first facility could be purchased out of receivership. We're not going to show individual lien holder positions, because that would be rather we're showing the aggregate number as a payable of the MRC for now. As that, again, this is one of those things that's in flux, and when the lien holders get paid off, that'll be shown in a new way in fourth quarter. But for now, this is the appropriate way, given what we know, and the appropriate treatment. So I think, you know, the usual tables are here, and again, the usual transactions are shown by fund. What it comes to is three recommendations. The first recommendation is the distribution, and it turns out to be a $127,999.99. That's what that's how the math worked this quarter, and that's the distribution to reduce the effective net disposal cost by $5 a ton for joining members that were equities, and by $3 per ton for new joining members, or joining members that were new charter municipalities under Exhibit B to the joinder agreement. In the last meeting, the MRC board directed staff that the payments to reimburse fees not collected in the quarter are going to be deferred until the MRC cash position improves. And so that number was calculated and put in the letter, but it's identified as a deferred number rather than as a recommendation to pay it out shortly after the board approval vote. To fund the distribution, a recommendation is $130,000 to move from the target value reserve fund, which is basically held within the tip fee stabilization fund, to the development and distribution account, which is used to handle the distributions. And finally, the recommendation is an additional $200,000 to the tip fee stabilization fund to the contingency account to prepare for cash flow needs in the upcoming quarter, related both to bypass and payment for bypass disposal, and for other needs of the facility and related to the facility in MWS, other advances to MWS that should cover it based on our cash flow projections today. So I think that's the letter at a high level. I'm always happy to answer any questions. Again, we're focused on MRC and the recommendations about cash flow management for the MRC to meet its needs and to meet the needs of advances to MWS going forward.
George,
Question? Yep.
I think it'd be a good appropriate time to mention too, and so there's no confusion, as part of the original agreements that distributions are done on October 31st of.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, good point.
That's part of the original agreements.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Those, the commercial operation date of the original agreement referred to in the joinder agreement was November 1st, 2019, which means the 36-month period, which started then, ends October 31st, 2022. So basically, after this, after third quarter and fourth quarter, there will only be one more month of distributions in this form, in the form we've had for the prior 35 months.
We actually paid them longer since we paid it starting in 2018. I believe we started paying those distributions, so everybody
Yeah.
got quite a bit more distribution than it was originally anticipated, so.
Yeah, we started April 1st, so we got there was an extra close to a year and a half.
Does anybody have any questions for George? George, I did actually think of one thing that I did mention earlier in the finance committee meeting, when on your first page where you're talking about entering into the lien holder agreements.
Yeah.
Wasn't it MWS that entered into the lien holder agreements, or does it matter?
Well, it was, I'll defer to John on that. I believe it was the MRC.
Yeah, MRC entered into those. It is contemplated they can be assigned to MWS.
Okay, but it was MRC.
Yes, initially, correct.
All right, well, with no other questions, do we have a motion to accept the report and the recommendations?
Still moved. Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. No discussion. All in favor? All right. Thank you, George, for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Glad we have your brain working on it. Okay, next we have our treasurer, Sophie Wilton, reporting to us.
So Mike ran a phenomenal finance committee meeting earlier this morning. And in that meeting, he reviewed our budget to actual month over month reconciliation for 2022. So at the end of the third quarter, we were 79% spent, which tracks with what we would kind of expect. We also reviewed potential budget adjustments. I realize the board just wants Mike and I to stay to the bottom line. Mike and I are not comfortable with that. We'd like to have more guidance. So we looked at the various cost centers and are proposing that the board approve adjustments to the totals within those. I'm just gonna say the change and for the proposal. So we are proposing that we add $5,700 to administration, that we leave financial services the way they are, that our technical consulting budget would actually be reduced by $39,000, that our legal services budget would be increased by $12,000, that our miscellaneous budget would be decreased by $8,000, not $88,000. On a $10,000 budget, we just want to reduce it by 8. And contingency would be reduced by $60,700, with our expense to secure CRM increased $90,000. So for you at home or folks who don't have a scorecard to try to keep up, that is a net zero to the budget. We're just moving money. So that's our proposal. Do you want me to continue with the next proposal? Sure. So the next proposal is that we have bills to pay. This is actually one of the smallest ones that we've had in a very long time. $25,808.37. We've already paid the $95.39 cell phone bill, but that is on the piece. So the total, including what has already been paid, is $25,903.76. Again, for those without the document, it is all basic operation. It's employee and employee-related expenses, legal and technical services expenses, rent, and our bookkeeping services.
Very good. Thank you, Sophie. I know you spent a lot of time working on it, and I know Mike does a great job doing all the background work.
This, I will tell you, on this one, I did very little. Mike actually did the lion's share, and I just got to be a supervisor. I love it.
We value your historical perspective and your knowledge about all of the MRC finances, working together with Mike and the team. So we have two proposals that have been put forward. And I guess I would seek a motion.
I move that we accept both proposals, the one concerning the budget line items without changing the overall budget, and the second approving expenses. Second.
Okay, very good. Motion in a second. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Right, it's a vote. Okay, so our next item is a review and consideration of the slate for the Board of Directors elections for 2022. As is always the case, every year, 3 of the Board of Directors slots are up for election, and this year it is Tony, Bob, and Dana, thank you, that are up for re-election. Dana has chosen to not put his hat in this year, but we did receive 5 nominations for folks, and that slate of people includes Bob Butler, thank you, Tony Smith, Ella Bowman, Town Manager for Oakland, Paula Scott, Town Manager and Treasurer for the Town of Hampden, and Eric Trewergy, who's on the Select Board Chair for the Town of Surrey. And so my understanding of our role is to essentially confirm that each of these individuals meets the criteria for being eligible to be considered for the position on the board. And then we sort of approve it as that. So I don't believe, does anybody have any concerns about the qualifications for any of these
So
individuals?
I just want to be really clear what the qualifications are.
Yes, clarify.
You either have to work, you have to either be an employee appointed by a town that is a member, or you have to live in a member community. So it's not whether we think it's appropriate, it's not whether they have experience. We are not vetting the particulars of an individual. It's simply whether or not they meet the residency requirement of the bylaws.
That is correct. Okay. And seeing that we have no concerns about any of the eligibility of any of the nominations, I would accept a motion to adopt the slate.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll write down your hand here. So all in favor? I'm glad to see that there's interest in participating in the MRC board. We're always excited to see that. So you got a little race on. Everybody get their campaign signs out. All right. And along with that, I believe in short order, our executive director will be sending out the ballots.
Yes.
And again, as a reminder to our members, each community will receive 1 ballot and they're able to vote for 1 individual.
Yes.
And their votes, like everything, are weighted based on tonnage. And so all of those votes come in and get slotted into with their weights and things like
Yes.
that.
So
So,
they all get plugged into a
yes.
spreadsheet that shows the
but
percentage.
the
of-
important thing is each member community gets a single vote for a single candidate. And then
And
the 3 with the highest tonnage get the slots on the board. And
correct,
it's a 3-year term that starts in January of 2023 and runs through December of 2025. And those votes are due in by like early December.
right. So what
Usually
will
the first week in
happen,
December.
what's gonna happen here in a few minutes is we are gonna discuss date for our annual meeting.
Yep.
And then I will try to have the ballots out and in within a week in my 30-day window of that meeting.
Mhm.
So that's how all this will kind of,
So we
ballots will probably-
would work backwards.
Yeah.
yeah, ballots will probably go out next week, but.
Okay.
As long as you guys don't pick November 30th for the annual meeting, I think we should be in good shape.
Well, given that that's the next item on the agenda, why don't we discuss that? So we're looking to set a date for the annual meeting. Typically, it happens around the second week in December. We've often, perhaps for many years, had it on a Wednesday, but there's no need for us to adhere to that necessarily. We'll be looking to have an in-person gathering, perhaps at the town of Orono, which has ample space if it works for them.
About December 14th.
December 14th, so that would be the second week in December.
Let me send off a little, my laptop has died, so I have to send off a
Oh, I
little.
put a cord behind you.
Oh, you're really good. Thank you. It's gonna take a minute, but you pick the date and then we can circle back if it's not.
So, and the other thing too is, we often do it, sort of like mid to late afternoon, sort of towards the end of the day. We've done it like the 3 to 5 range, so it's 14.
3 to 7.
3
3 to
3 to 5.
Enjoy yourself.
3 to 5. 2 to 6.
I'll let that settle for a minute. and
Sure.
Make a call if I don't.
But in a situation like that, if the meeting was on December 14th, ballots and votes would be due a week prior type of thing.
Yeah, there's plenty, with
End of that
a date that, there's plenty of time. I could probably have those wrapped up by the end of next week.
Okay, so we'll wait to confirm that. We'll circle back in a little bit. We have one more item on the agenda before public comment, which is to review of our extension letter regarding integral capabilities for performance test protocol. John, you're up.
No, thank you, Karen. So this is as everyone knows, a familiar item. Hopefully this will be the last time. That's my prediction. This just as a reminder, this harkens back to the performance test protocol that was conducted back in November 2019, October 2019 timeframe. The Hamden facility had passed the test, but there were certain conditions attached to that related to what were defined as integral capabilities. And there was a deadline to meet those conditions. That deadline has been extended due to the fact that there's been a suspension of the operations at the Hamden facility. So because the conditions that are attached relate to the site lease, it has been recommended, still is my recommendation to extend that deadline. What we have been doing is at quarterly meetings, reviewing that item. The suggestion or recommendation is to again extend it. We usually use a few days after the next quarterly meeting, which I think will be January 25th. So the recommendation would be, say, January 27th. One thing that's a little bit of a twist for this one is obviously, as mentioned earlier, Municipal Waste Solutions is the facility owner. And for example, the site lease has been assigned to Municipal Waste Solutions. So what I'm going to recommend that the board do is have a motion. The suggested motion is to authorize the executive director to execute an additional extension letter regarding the integral capabilities to January 27th, 2023, and further authorize the MRC board president as the manager of Municipal Waste Solutions to also execute that extension letter. So that's the suggested motion.
So moved.
That motion.
Second,
Second.
Joelle, you pick.
Okay, we have a motion to second. No comments or questions? All in favor? All right, thank you. Okay, so we have, we've come to the public comment section of the meeting. So if you do have questions, feel free you can raise your hand and you can talk. Or you can type into the Q&A there. So, the question, we did have one question that's in the chat
Yeah,
box.
I didn't understand fundamental item number 4. Can you explain that again?
That's I think George should take that one. That's the rebate portion, George, on.
Or is it the fundamental matter, the discussion that we had about the process of fundamental matters? Can you ask,
She's saying item number 4, so.
that's where we had the whole discussion of
Oh.
what fundamental
Oh,
were,
okay.
so I think,
Agenda item 4 or the 4th fundamental matter?
or the discussion around what the process of fundamental matters.
Can you please clarify? Just- And Carrie, that's for you too, Carrie Donovan. The one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Carrie Donovan would like to speak,
To clarify, we can
to
do.
clarify, we would love that. And
Want to know about the rebates.
all right,
So George,
Okay, sure. Yeah, now if you go back to the master waste supply agreement, there's an appendix to that, which has a fairly complicated calculation of rebates. That was, if you go back to 2017, what one of the original equity investors in Postal wanted to have as part of the profit sharing related to that, to the original proposal for the facility. As we went on, first of all, it was never, that appendix was never used. Second, it was fairly complicated. But third of all, there's a much simpler way to do it, which is to revert back to the way we did it when the MRC was owned shares in PERC, and to basically have PERC go through its, or to have the new entity meet its cash flow needs and then declare available cash at the end for distribution, and then that would be distributed. Yeah, and the basis for that would be in the county records for MWS rather than some artificial formula. That was an approach that Revere found more favorable. In fact, as we've gone through this process for the last 2 years, we've constantly gotten comments that, well, isn't there a way to simplify the rebate calculation? Why can't we just use distributable cash and split it up pro rata the way you used to do it? And in fact, understanding that that's likely what's going to happen going forward, the fundamental matters just makes that change. That basically that piece of the master waste supply agreement, if the complicated formula is going to get deleted and replaced, but before and with basically distributing available cash. But before the MRC could do that and take that action, it has to put it out to the membership, because rebates are something that's also referenced in the joinder agreements. And so we just want to make sure there's a clear record that the change is being made. If there are comments on it, that they're taken into account, or if there's concerns about it, that there's a more focus on it to the extent to address the concerns. So that's kind of the history, what it is. Bottom line, it's an easier calculation and probably a more conventional calculation of what distributions or rebates might be considered when the facility's profit.
Sophie?
the only, I loathe to correct George, so it's not a correction. But I would just clarify that by saying Revere would announce its cash needs and distribute the rest, it's not an announcement. We go back to a situation where Mike and George would be pouring through the expenses and revenues that go into Revere and calculating what are basic cash needs, and then the board would come and agree to it, which is what we did. When I first started, MRC was so easy because it was, this is what PERC said that the cash was, this is what we say. Usually it was within a few dollars, and it calculated the waterfall. And it was so easy, a good lunch. So this will mean more for MRC. The other thing, just in case there are people out there thinking, well, if it's so much easier, George, why didn't we do it this way to start with? Is that at the end of the MRC park relationship, we began to argue about what was a reasonable expense. And for people who maybe haven't looked at the history books, MRC actually sued PERC. And George and I spent lots of time together in a dark room with lawyers fighting out a mediated settlement of that, which included the sale of MRC shares in the PERC plan. So there's a reason we wanted to avoid it. What we're learning is our desire for a more conservative, less conflict riddled approach created more conflict. So now we'll revert to the way we did it before. That worked
Yeah.
for many years.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, so Sophie, perhaps in the in hope of simplifying, I oversimplified, so I'll accept the amendment. But I think that's a good way to put it is also it's not going to be Revere or MRC, it's going to be MWS records, which are subject to audit, and so that we'll have a clear and transparent path from the numbers in the books and the numbers that go into the distributions with board oversight and MRC staff oversight at various points. So I think it is a clean, transparent process. I think we're all anxious to move forward to the point where there are rebates from the profitable operations of the facility, and we hope that comes soon. And this is just one more step in getting.
Thanks, George. Bob, and then John.
Yeah, I would just add that this is another way that the MR3 through MWS is able to exert some degree of, call it supervision. Control is the traditional term over what happens financially in the entity. And that's reassuring to me. And I think it's important also to talk about, call it profit sharing, in the same breath that you're talking about the admin fee and the lease payments, because all of these streams accrue in one, either directly or indirectly to the MRC, strengthen the plausibility of the deal for both sides, makes it a good deal.
Thanks, Bob. John?
Yeah, just a brief comment to build off what others have said. From the rebate perspective, the fundamental matter is actually tied to any change in entitlement to rebates. And I would say that the entitlement is still there, but in the effort of kind of full context and transparency, it was included as a fundamental matter because the formula is going to change, if you will. It's not based on the economic performance of the facility based on coastal's financing. That's over. And it's much different. And as George mentioned, I think it'll be much more simpler and potentially at least arguably could present a better opportunity for rebates now that you have, no more debt service associated with the facility. So although the entitlement remains the same, that is absolutely the same contractually. I think MRC staff felt it was important to include that as part of the fundamental matter. So folks are aware of that change. And as George mentioned, it's really going to be pegged more to economic performance metrics of municipal waste solutions, obviously with MRC and the members being part owner of that, assuming the joint venture comes to fruition here quite closely. So just wanted to make that point of reference that entitlements are not going away. They're absolutely there. The source and formula to get there will just be different to reflect the current and upcoming circumstances.
Great. Thank you. That was a great question. We appreciate that. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask or comments they'd like to make? All right. Do we have any feedback on the meeting date or time?
Yes, we're good.
All right. So we're looking at December 14th.
December 14th, I've got it open for Mike to start all of his moving of the room stuff that he does at 2. But the meeting, I think we said would start at 3.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And that would be at Orono Town Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, mark your calendars, everybody. It'll be a good time. All right.
While we're talking about meetings.
Yeah.
You just might want to prepare the board that with our cleosing coming up,
Yes.
we're probably looking at having a couple more meetings as documents start arriving across our desk and we have things that we talk about.
Okay, so probably a meeting next week.
I'm assuming there'll be a meeting at the end of next week, and then obviously there's gonna have to be something on the tenth.
November 10th.
Know what that looks like.
Okay.
So, would it make sense for us to book something in now, and if you have to move it, do
Yeah,
that?
I would ask what everybody's availability is. I believe it's on the 3rd or the 4th, and then on the 10th. I mean, not just to, these will be virtual special board meetings. But
All right. Does anybody have conflicts on the 3rd or the 4th at, let's say, 10 a.m.?
Let me get to the right month. You had me in December here, guys.
I'm on vacation on the 3rd. I'll be back later on that afternoon.
So you'll be in the office on the 4th?
Fourth is good for me.
So that would be Friday, December 4th at 10 a.m. I mean, sorry, November. No, you got me December. George?
Yeah, I'm not available on the 4th. I'll be traveling. I am available the morning of the 3rd, so.
Okay. We could look at the afternoon on the 3rd.
That's my end. I think I'm in at noon. So.
you're not.
I'm in Augusta all day and then have to race back for a meeting with my council.
On the 3rd.
So
So
I don't
George and
work
I
first
might,
thing.
for if we knew need to discuss on the 4th, what we would do is we would be presenting to you where things currently stand at with documentations and a closing date. So George, you and I could have that all worked out, so I could present it to the board if we had to stick to the 4th, correct?
Sure, we'll find a way to do it.
Okay.
So you want me to hold the 4th at 10?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
November.
We're November 4th, 10 a.m. is a tentative meeting, special meeting date for next week.
And we
It
want
would
that one
be,
to
it would be
in person.
it would be virtual.
No,
Virtual.
both
Yeah,
these would be
yeah.
virtual.
And then again on November 10th, that's a Thursday. 10. Holiday.
It's the 11th. we don't have an office open, so-
Whoa, well, you little lucky ducks. Sorry about
We
that.
got a good
One
one.
of my things, Bob and I are noticing policy.
Yeah.
Friday's a holiday for you. Okay, you just gotta, we need to counsel him on what all the holidays are, so.
I think that usually we're done by 3. Legislative policy. Bob
It
and I,
starts at 10, yeah, they're usually done
think
by lunch.
legislative policy.
Yeah. That's what might be longer though, because there's
Yeah.
more stuff going on.
Yeah.
So we can-
Will you make it back in time or will you just do it from,
I could do it from MMA.
I have a 20.
You know, the 10th might be a tentative meeting. The
Mhm.
10th would be to do any kind of extension or anything like that. So technically, if we could probably have that discussion on the 9th, if we had to.
oh, so if the closing happens, the
Closing
board actually
happens.
doesn't need to meet?
I don't.
Okay, so
know.
we'd only be meeting in the case of an
Only be
extension.
meeting if for some reason there's not a closing. And with all the documentations and finance people involved and everything else, it's like buying a house. So it's just a lot more.
Yeah.
To it. So things could get moved on that closing. So that's a tentative. And I think the board would just be getting together to, I believe, John or George, correct me if I'm wrong, to vote on an extension, which we would probably know on the 9th anyways.
Okay,
If
but,
that works better for folks. Yeah, that works better.
and we could do an extension contingent only upon receipt of the deposit that will be required or something.
But
so-
all that's the meeting for the 4th. What will our ask be if there is an extension? So that's what.
I just want to make sure they have time to be able to get the cash together that they're going to need to provide if they do need an extension.
Understood.
So,
So,
yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that all the work happens on Friday the fourth.
It does.
And the 9th would be a quick meeting to just agree or not to grant the extension. And I'm gonna guess that would be based on what information and what you had
Right.
had received from them or what you had in your hand. I mean, I think different board members might have different thresholds.
Understood.
What time is it on the fourth?
At 10 a.m.
We're on the 10th now.
And on the 9th, could we do something after 11?
Yeah, actually afternoon would be better for me.
2:00.
2 o'clock, that sounds good.
Looks good.
Wednesday, November 9th, 2 p.m.
No, I don't.
And again, that would be virtual, special meeting. We'll send out notice of these.
Yeah, I'll put those right in the.
Is Haley Ward gonna do these for us?
Yes, we can do them.
Both are.
And again, Wednesday, the November 9th would only be in the case if they needed an extension.
Right, other than that, it's gonna be whatever's required in the lawyer's office for signatures.
All right. Okay, so we do have on the agenda an executive session, but that's if needed, and I don't believe we have any need for an executive session today, so that's good news. Any other items that anybody would like to bring up? Any other last comments or questions from anyone in the audience?
Wasteful committee meeting. When are we gonna have that? Nice.
Or Chief Alita?
You get to decide those things.
I'll be in touch with you.
You'll be in touch with Mike. Supposed to be doing some of the lifting here.
I am.
Yeah.
So, if I could, during this meeting, we talked a lot about how amazing our executive director is, and he is amazing, and we have incredible support staff. I think it would be remiss, though, not to recognize the work that's happening behind the scenes with several of our board members. Our president is juggling a whole bunch of stuff and managing to represent us in amazing ways. I have just heard amazing things about the way you presented to the board. And we would not be where we are, Karen, without all of you. I really appreciate that. And I really hope, I noticed other board members are stepping up, but I really feel like we have a few board members that are coming to meetings and not necessarily helping in between the quarterly meetings. And I really hope that people who want to serve on this board will step up and help get the work done and not just sit at the table when we're on camera.
And one thing I wanted to note too, is I was thinking about this yesterday, like I was thinking about how the city of Brewer and the city of Bangor have been really good to us and allowing us to have all your help that Erin and Karen have been doing outside of the regular board meetings. So maybe a quick thank you note to their councils, thanking them for allowing us to borrow them for a little bit here and there.
Thank you, that's great.
Actually, I have something I'd like to add to that. To add to Sophie, I had a chance to sit and listen to Mike and Karen deliver their comments to the governor. And I was extremely impressed with how thorough and how well spoken both of you were. Mike, I never see anybody in my life walk as fast as you. And Governor Mills was able to keep up to blow my mind. But I always thank you for what all of you are doing. Because I was so impressed.
All right. Well, with that, I appreciate everybody's time. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Please stick around. We got lunch coming in a few minutes. So
Thanks.